On today's episode, Becoming Spiritually Influential at Work with guest Bill Peel. Welcome back to the Theology of Business podcast, the show that helps marketplace Christians to partner with God in business to transform the marketplace and make an impact in eternity. I'm your host, Darren Shearer, founder of Highbridge Books, which publishes books written by inspiring thought leaders. And I'm the author of 3 books, including The Marketplace Christian and Marketing Like Jesus. This podcast is sponsored by Highbridge Books. If you're interested in publishing a book to make an impact for Christ in the culture, head on over to highbridgebooks.com/course to sign up for a free 3-video author training course. In this course, you'll learn how to write a great nonfiction book, how to market your book, and how to start a blog to build your platform as a thought leader. And now, on to today's episode. Well, today we're going to be discussing the theme of becoming spiritually influential at work. And we're joined by Bill Peel, who is the founding executive director for the Center for Faith and Work at LeTourneau University. And if you probably recognize that name, LeTourneau University, which was founded by R.G. LeTourneau, the great man of God industrialist and inventor. Actually talked about him back on episode 13 of the Theology of Business podcast. But Bill is the founding executive director of this center there at the university, which was created to help Christians understand their work's importance to God and experience Christ's transforming presence and power in every workplace in every nation. And for more than 25 years, Bill has coached thousands of men and women to discover their calling, grasp their significance to God's kingdom, and become a spiritual influence in the workplace. And he's an award-winning author and co-author of 7 books, which have actually been published in multiple languages, and it's including Workplace Grace, What God Does When Men Lead, and Discover Your Destiny. And he's just put out some incredible content and been able to connect with what the center is doing through social media, and they're doing amazing work. Bill, thank you for joining us on the Theology of Business podcast.
Darren, it's great to be with you this morning, and we really appreciate your contribution to this area of faith and work integration as well.
Well, we've all got an important role to play, and at least in America, I mean, we've got 156 million people that need the love of Christ, and so it's going to take a lot of people to make this happen, and across the globe as well. Well, tell us a bit more about your background and what inspired you to dive into this topic of becoming spiritually influential at work, which is a topic that you've written at length about.
Yeah, well, Darren, I'm by training a theologian. I have a master's degree in theology from Dallas Theological Seminary and a doctorate from Gordon Conwell, and so it's been an interesting journey. I certainly didn't start out believing that work really mattered to God. In fact, I thought of it just as simply something people had to do to earn a living, and of course, they need to make money so they can support God's real work. And it wasn't 6 weeks after I graduated from seminary years ago with a master's degree that a fellow sat me down and he told me, he said, "Peel, you realize God's heroes don't stand behind pulpits, don't you?" Now, he wasn't criticizing pastors there at all. He was just reminding me that what happens to the pulpit really needs to be geared toward helping people that are out on the front lines in the culture, in the workplace, really understand what the Scripture means to their lives from Monday to Saturday. And that was really the beginning of my journey toward understanding a biblical theology of work. Now, it took a few years, but about 11 years later, in 1987, I made the jump to discipling people full-time in the workplace to make whole life disciples, not just talking about people's devotional life or their family life or their church life, but what faith really looked like between Sundays, from Monday to Saturday, especially since most folks spend that time in the workplace. What does that actually look like for people that spend 40 to 60% or more of their waking hours in the workplace?
Well, and I love that advice and that really admonition from the man who said that, that God's heroes don't stand behind pulpits. And obviously there are great heroes of the faith that have stood behind pulpits. We think Billy Graham and others, but usually when you hear a pastor start to talk about, okay, the heroes of the Christian faith, it's D.L. Moody and Hudson Taylor and those that devoted themselves to a form of ministry that we traditionally think of as ministry, but it's guys and women like R.G. Letourneau and others, and John Wanamaker, who have really stepped forward and say, you know what, if we're going to make an impact for the kingdom, we're all going to have to play a role in that.
Well, yeah, Darren, that's exactly right. I don't know if most people ever thought about this, but actually about 75% of the people that we call heroes of the Bible, actually characters, that the Bible introduces to, made their living, out in the real world, not in a church or synagogue or whatever, but they made their living in the marketplace, basically. And you're right, R.G. Letourneau had a very interesting faith journey. He became a Christian when he was a teenager, but didn't dedicate his life fully to Christ until he was in his 20s, and he was a businessman at that particular point. And his sisters had gone off to China to become missionaries there right after the Boxer Rebellion in the early 1900s. And so they were serious Green Berets for Jesus out there in that place. And so Mr. Letourneau, when he dedicated his life to Christ, went to his pastor and said, okay, I'm all in here. What does that mean? Thinking that he was going to become a missionary or a pastor, an evangelist. And after they prayed, his pastor told him something very important for his life and for the rest of us as well, that God needs business people as much as he needs pastors and missionaries. And so Mr. Letourneau said, okay, if that's what God wants me to be, that's what I'll be. And the rest is somewhat history. Not only did he found this incredible university, this Polytechnic Engineering University in Texas, which produces to this day outstanding engineers, but his inventions went on to help us win World War II. He provided 70% of the heavy earth-moving machines that the Seabees and the Corps of Engineers used in World War II, and also it was his machines and inventions, his 300 or some patents, that actually helped create the highway infrastructure of America in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. And so we all benefit from Mr. Letourneau's vision to follow Christ in the workplace. And so, for the next 60 years after he made that decision, he was working to figure out what it really meant to follow Christ there and to dedicate his life and business to God and make God his business partner.
And we need more of these examples of marketplace and workplace Christians who are being spiritually influential, not just from behind a pulpit, but actually out there in their workplace. And, Jesus said that when a student is fully trained, he will be like his teacher. And, I went to seminary as well. And one thing I noticed in seminary is that the professors are trying to reproduce other professors in many cases. And it's like that's the ultimate for professors, to know that their student went on to get a PhD and then went on to go and teach in a great university. Well, what about the rest of the population? And our pastors, in many cases, they're making disciples, and so a disciple is one who becomes like the teacher in many ways, and at least their expression of of a Christ follower. And so we need more of these workplace examples for people to follow.
Well, Darren, you're exactly right about needing more examples. And actually, I've been very encouraged over the last few years to see that pastors are beginning to understand and wake up to this. We used to, I'd say 10 years ago even, in the group ask, have you ever heard a sermon on work? And, just a scattered few would raise their hands, if any at all. But today, that's just not the case. We've done some research on this lately, and there's a huge uptick in pastors that are beginning to pay attention to this. But it's not just preaching about work that's important here. It's actually, as you mentioned, putting examples up and letting people see things. A businessman years ago told me that, Bill, people don't just need to hear about what this looks like. They actually need to see it in other people's lives. And so one of the things we've tried to do at the Center for Faith and Work is to shoot some short video stories of people actually talking about what it means for them to do business for the glory of God. And we have a number of these on our website that are just marvelous. They're short, so they can actually be used in different settings, even in a sermon. If people wanted to, if a pastor wanted to show this, or in small groups, or in Sunday school classes, or whatever. But some wonderful examples that we've been able to find of what it means to run a business for the glory of God and do business for the glory of God. So we're excited about that, and we're excited about the progress that the church is making here in this area.
I love that. And it's not about us trying to say, Pastor, you need to become super pastor. And I think that when we talk about tent making, sometimes, maybe a pastor could get the idea that, okay, they're already running a church and now they need to go and run a business at the same time and basically sort of become, super pastor. And that's not necessarily what it's about from my perspective. It's about letting people share testimonies from the workplace and from the marketplace about how God is moving through them in order to make an impact in the workplace. And it's not about saying, Pastor, you need to become more of a business person so that you can relate more to business. That might be part of it.
Yeah. Well, it's amazing when you actually get out there and spend a little time with people in business. They face a lot of the same struggles. Businesses face a lot of the same struggles that churches do. They have a little bit different bottom line, obviously, but you're still running an organization. One of the things that I think I almost accidentally fell into, just because of my personal interest, was at least once a week going to lunch with a business person that was in my church when I was working in churches. And I would ask them if we could meet, that I could actually pick them up at their place of business so I could see where they worked. And it always led to some fabulous conversations about how faith really impacted them and what their struggles were. And so that's something pretty easy for a pastor to do, to gain some more insight into what their congregation is actually facing during the week, as far as applying biblical truth to their Monday through Saturday world in a significant way.
I love it. Beautiful. So we're talking about what it means to be spiritually influential at work. And we've been talking about how we need more examples of what that looks like. But what does it mean to be spiritually influential at work? And what does spiritual influence in the workplace look like in your own journey as a marketplace Christian?
Well, being spiritually influential is very simple. It means letting Christ live his life through you. And that actually begins with with your personal relationship with Christ and realizing, first of all, that He's Lord of the workplace as much as He is your place of worship, and that He shows up there before you do. And the very fact that it can be a place in this world that you can carry on business is because Christ is sustaining the world and making it all possible. So that's kind of the first step. And so you walk into your workplace abiding in Christ, and if that's who you are, and you carry that awareness of Christ in your life and in your workplace into your work, it can't help but affect the way you actually do your work, relate to other people. And so being influential, quite frankly, is just letting people see to let them see Christ in your life. And so that's kind of the most simple explanation of that, but it involves a lot of different things as well. If you're a business leader, it means how you treat people, how you the products and services that you make. Is this something that really serves people and creates value and worth for the community you live in? Are you making ethical decisions that honor Christ? Are you thinking about how you can serve the community beyond the core business that you have? And so there are all kinds of ways that works its way out. Now, most of the time, when we think about being spiritually influential, we think about evangelism in the workplace, and that's certainly a big part of that. The character of Jesus Christ is awfully attractive to people, but there's something that that's even more important than that. If you want to influence other people specifically for Christ and spur their spiritual interest, and that is how you actually do your work. The quality of your work is incredibly important to God and to other people. In other words, if we want people to pay attention to our faith, the first thing we have to do is to pay attention to our work. Paul says in Ephesians and Colossians that we're to do our work with all of our hearts, to put ourselves into it. In other words, to do the best work possible, as if we're actually presenting this to God, which we are actually. Right. And right. So obviously He deserves our best efforts there, and so that starts that way. And then when people see the quality of our lives and the Christ-likeness of our character, when competence and character go together, it really produces an authority for our words as we relate to other people. And then, lastly, I would add one more kind of part, which is this foundation of spiritual influence, and that is our concern for other people. Competence and character creates authority. Concern creates, a real desire in people to know what actually makes us tick when we stop and we really show concern for other people, which starts in remembering their names, remembering what they've, told you, thinking about, what's going on in their lives outside work, and remembering that, and offering to pray for people, and doing helpful things to them to make their lives easier in the workplace in some way. And then you follow that with wise communication, being willing to actually express your faith to people when they show an interest, and talk further about that with them. And so those are real key things: competence, character, concern, and then I'd say wise communication. Really understanding what's appropriate to say in given situations with other people in the workplace.
Well said. Well, you've already shared some of the background of the spiritual influence of R.G. Letourneau, and our listeners would be familiar with Letourneau, and also what Chick-fil-A has been doing, and Truett Cathy and Dan Cathy. And so there are some of the more familiar examples, but who are some of the other real-life examples of people who have demonstrated this spiritual influence at work that maybe our listeners might not be familiar with?
Well, one of my real heroes is a fellow by the name of William Wilberforce, who was a parliamentarian in the United Kingdom at the beginning of the 19th century, 1700s, early 1800s, and he became a committed Christian after he was a member of Parliament, and thought he would end up going to seminary, and he actually went to his mentor, and who told him that maybe God's called you to Parliament. And so he ended up staying there and asking God what he wanted him to do. And so God laid on William Wilberforce's heart this idea of eliminating the slave trade in England. And England abolished the slave trade without a war because of William Wilberforce. And it was a 50-year process, a journey, but he over time both eliminated the slave trade and eliminated slavery in the United Kingdom. And he's an incredible, important person. But, there's also some business people in the United States. We think of J.C. Penney, actually. We know his stores all over. But his original store was called the Golden Rule Store. And wow. So, yeah, and he was very committed to biblical principles in running his business. But, those are larger than life heroes. Sometimes there's just a lot of folks out there that are really trying to live for Christ. There's a number of my friends are leading workplace affinity groups in major corporations where they've been able to create employee resource groups within their companies at Texas Instruments and American Express and Hewlett-Packard and 3M, different places like that, where Christians gather together and talk about what faith really looks like in their workplace and how they can support each other to live for Christ there.
Beautiful. Well, that'll segue into this question. I want to hear about the upcoming Faith at Work conference that's happening there in Dallas, and I would imagine that a lot of the content and the presentations that will be shared there would also be the types of content that these groups are digging into around the country and around the world. Is that right?
That's exactly right. So back in the mid-'80s, there was a movement of people began to arise, to be noticed, I guess, of this whole looking at this whole idea of faith-work integration. And it's really grown from there. At the turn of the millennium, we see, thousands of different organizations and groups that have started addressing and helping people in the workplace understand what it means to follow Christ in the workplace. And what's exciting is this is not just from one segment. It's not just business people meeting together, which has been great. It's not pastors and theologians doing this. It's business people, pastors and theologians, universities, seminaries, and a ton of workplace ministries that have sprung up in the last number of years that are trying to address this issue. And what's interesting is these groups have been largely disconnected, kind of working in their own area. And so 2 years ago, we convened the first Faith at Work Summit in Boston and invited the people that were really interested in this from the business world, from church leaders, seminaries, universities, and these marketplace ministries to come together to meet each other for a lot of times for the first time, and then just to begin to talk together how we can work together to spread this message and foster and enhance the movement to really honor Christ in our workplaces. So in this next October, 2 years after the first one, we will meet in Dallas, Texas again, and we've invited a host of marketplace leaders, theologians from seminaries, from churches, and universities, university professors, business professors, and marketplace ministries to come together to, again, meet each other and then begin to confer about how we can work together more effectively and efficiently to spread the gospel and this idea that work really matters to God throughout the church and in the workplace going forward here. And so we're excited about that. We will have about 25 different speakers that will address the crowd in doing TED-type talks of about 15 minutes each. And it's a fast-moving conference. It is also a working conference. It's not so much the talking heads up front, but we will take a lot of time to confer and visit in breakouts where different groups will discuss different aspects of the faith work movement and what needs to happen from here in various workplaces and situations around the country. And the last day, on Saturday, we'll devote the whole day to addressing how workplace ministries and people in the workplace work more directly with local churches to create whole life discipleship approaches in the church, so that we can really see this movement reach a tipping point of influence in the workplace in America.
Well, Bill, I certainly will be attending, and I hope many of our listeners will also attend. And people can go and register at centerforfaithandwork.com. Is that right?
That's centerforfaithandwork.com is the LeTourneau Center for Faith and Work's website. If people want to know more about the summit, they can go to fwsummit.org, Faith and Work, fwsummit.org, and see who's going to be speaking and leading groups and exactly what we'll be accomplishing there. And there's registration to read. It's actually a very inexpensive conference as a whole. We've been able to keep that down, the cost down through wonderful sponsorships of businesses and different organizations and churches who'll be part of underwriting this particular conference. But if you're interested in this area of faith and work, either as a leader or in some ways wanting this conversation, wanting to learn more about this conversation of what in the world faith has to do with work, then this is it'd be a tremendous opportunity for you to come together with some of the leading thinkers in this area.
Excellent. Bill, what would be one parting piece of advice you'd like to share with our listeners as we sign off here?
Well, I would just say this, that make sure you begin your day recognizing the lordship of Jesus Christ in your life, and then don't stop that. When you walk out the door of your home and head toward work or wherever you're going, to remember that Christ is there and that he wants to live out his life through you, and ask him to awaken you spiritually, because all of us kind of fall asleep and we forget about Christ during the work. Even pastors do that. Even theologians do that. And so we need, the Spirit of God just to reawaken us at times to God's presence. And when Christ is living his life out through us, which is what the Christian life is, when we're abiding with him, then then He will show us and direct our paths, and not only what we do and how we do our work, but also how we influence other people as they see us do our work as well.
Bill, thanks for coming on the Theology of Business podcast and sharing your wisdom and expertise with us. And definitely everybody go to fwsummit.org, O-R-G, to go and register for the upcoming Faith at Work Summit. It's going to be an incredible conference. I'm looking forward to attending and hopefully meeting many of you there. Bill, thanks again, and appreciate the work you're doing to equip marketplace ministers.
Darren, thanks a lot. Appreciate your work too, and may God bless all that we do and say today.
Hope you've enjoyed this episode, and I would like to hear your feedback at theologyofbusiness.com, where you can get more information about marketplace ministry, spiritual gifts in the marketplace, marketing like Jesus, and Christ-centered leadership and entrepreneurship. And if you're interested in publishing a book to make an impact for Christ in the culture, head over to highbridgebooks.com/course to sign up for a free 3-video author training course, and also to check out some of the other books that we've been publishing. And in this course, you'll learn how to write a great nonfiction book, how to market your book, and how to start a blog to build your platform as a thought leader. Thanks for listening, and keep partnering with God in your business.